Eric Dorward here at the Spartan Rocketry Club, and I'm going to begin a new build today. And this is a Rocketarium kit. It is called the Gadfly SAM, as in Surface to Air Missile. I mostly build Estes kits because they're very widely available and quite affordable for the most part. This one is not. It's a Rocketarium kit, and I guess in part I'm supporting our good friends in Canada. But the other thing is they make interesting kits. A lot of them are scale model kits. I'm not entirely sure this one is. I think it is, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. But in any event, the other fun thing that a lot of Rocketarium kits have that you won't find in, I don't think there are any Estes kits currently being manufactured that do this, but a lot of Rocketarium kits offer you the opportunity to build cluster motors instead of just one. So clusters, like real rockets, they're almost entirely clustered rockets for the most part, anyway. So there's some realism aspect to it, but it's a different thing to build, and it's a different thing to fly. It's significantly harder to fly, honestly, because you have to get all three motors lit at the same time, which is not easy, usually, anyway. But this should be a fun build, so let's break open the box here. So Rocketarium stuff does come in a nice box instead of a bag, which is a nice perk. Some of the other things that are nice about Rocketarium kits is they are fairly modular, so there are a bunch of things in here that are just like pre-packaged individual bits that need to be built separately, and it turns out they have their own separate, separate instructions. So I'm going to start with what I have here, what I've pulled out. So among other things, Rocketarium kits have one of these guys, which is a baffle to use. It's going to be built into the kit, and this is, I would call it an alternative, but I'm still going to use wadding, but this is an alternative to using wadding in order to protect your parachute. The idea is that these pieces are going to go together something like this, and you can see that the holes here aren't going to line up with the holes here. And the idea is the hot gases from the ejection charge are going to go this way. They're going to go in through these holes, but they're not going to be able to then, well, the air will be able to get through, but the debris, which is the real problem, the real risk to your parachute, is not going to get through. So if there are any little burning bits of gunpowder, they might go through these holes, but they're almost assuredly not going to go through these. So it's a kind of bit of insurance. So we'll build that first. It's pretty simple, and the instructions here are separately done because this is, like I said, it's modular, which is kind of nice. First thing we need to do is we need to put the eye hook in. Actually, even before that, I need to sand this. This is a little, I can break some of that off with my finger, but I'm going to quickly sand. There is a little spot there that didn't get machined very well. So that should fit in fine now. Anyway, so this has an eye hook in it because this is actually going to be the anchor point for the recovery system, which is another nice little, another nice little perk of using one of these. You can certainly use the classic Estes approach of attaching the shock cord just inside the body tube. There are some drawbacks to that. Having it farther in makes it less likely that you're going to get it snagged on anything. So anyway, first step here is I'm going to put a little bit of glue. You saw that I was threading this eye hook through the hole. I'm going to put just a dot of glue in here, and then I'm going to pass it back through again. And I want to have the instructions say what, about 1/8 of an inch of the thread sticking through on the other side. So that's about right, and I'm just going to spread this glue out a little bit. The glue, I don't know how much it does, but it's a good idea. Couldn't hurt, right? Now the other thing that we're going to need to do, I'm going to let this dry for a moment just over there, and then I need to glue these two together. Now the instructions say that I should put this about 1/16 of an inch inside of the tube, so to let a little bit of space, or leave a little bit of space, I suppose. The reason for that is so we can make a fillet on both sides, really. So as I push this through, the glue is going to smear that way. So I'll have a decent fillet on one side, but not the other. Okay, so I have it in. That's too far. So I'm just going to use my finger to kind of align it about, I'm not going to measure, but just so you have a little bit of space with which to build that fillet. So that's, I do want it straight though. That's not straight. Alright, so that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right along the edge here. So these are nice. One potential downside though is that, well, there's two. One is this could potentially get clogged over time the more you use it. That seems pretty unlikely. You'd have to use it a whole lot in order to get enough crud inside this that the air wouldn't flow properly. So that's not, I'm not concerned about that pretty much at all. The other potential drawback is this is going to take the full force of the ejection charge, and it doesn't have any protection. It is a piece of wood. Plywood, I don't know, some kind of wood. So there is some potential that you could, it's very unlikely, but you could scorch it to the point maybe that it catches fire. I can't imagine that happening, honestly. But if you're really concerned about it, and there is some reason to be concerned with this because this is going to be a cluster of 3 motors, so it's going to take 3 ejection charges pretty much simultaneously. That's a good amount of kick and a good amount of crud going up to this. You could, if you really wanted to, put a layer of an ablator of some sort on. So something that would take the heat and just kind of slough off instead of the wood, which isn't going to slough, it could potentially burn. That thing would be epoxy. I am not going to put epoxy on this. I think that would be overkill. Plus, it would be annoying to just get it, on the wood, but not in the holes. So I'm going to give that a pass. I think that's overkill. I've done this. I've made one of these somewhat recently, and I didn't bother to put the glue fillet on both sides. I am going to put it on both sides for this because, again, this is going to take a bit more abuse than the typical one would, solely because it's going to take 3 ejection charges pretty much at the same time from the 3 motors. Alright, so I'm repeating the process for this. This is actually, I can't stick my fingers in anymore, but I do have this eye hook to hang on to, so that shouldn't be much of a problem either. And let's just give that a little tug so it's not quite lined up. There we go. I can live with that. Now this one, I'm still going to put the fillet on here, but you need to be a little bit more careful with this because all those holes are right, well, when I spread the glue out making the fillet, I'm going to probably I'm going to push a little bit of glue into the holes. Obviously, you do not want to push the glue into the holes. If you push the glue into the holes, you will have plugged the holes, and then they won't work. And not only will the air, won't get through to pop the chute out, but you could end up just trapping the hot gas in here, and that would be a significantly bigger potential risk. Alright, so I've kind of or patted off most of the glue that I see. I'm going to grab just a piece of balsa scrap here, and for the places that I can see where the glue got in a decent amount, I'm just going to spin this around to mop up any of the excess glue. It should just kind of sweep it off, and then I'll go on my piece of wood scrap here. Alright, so that's pretty good. This just needs to dry. That's a piece that we don't need for a while. The other thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to put together the motor mount, and this is, again, it's a separate pack, and it is going to be different because it's got, there we go, it's going to hold 3 different motors, and should have one more engine, yeah, there it is, it's stuck inside, one more engine block. There we go. We don't need this, don't need these. Alright, so There is a fairly major downside to this, and that is the way it's designed right now. There's no like active motor retention system. So typically we would have a hook of some sort like this that would hold the motor in place. Well, we don't have one of those. We don't have any of them. Now, I'm pretty sure you could probably engineer this so that you did have a hook, but this doesn't. So I think we'll try to take an approach at the end to put some kind of restraint on, but for the time being, you don't have to have one. If you do decide that you're going to just go as is, then you're going to have to tape all the motors in. So like here's a yellow tube, it's supposed to be the same size, right? So in it'll go, and you're going to have to tape right around here to hold it in place. And you'd think there's no way that's going to hold it. They actually hold pretty well. It's very surprising. You're also going to want to put some tape around the motor too so that it's friction fit in here. But between the friction fit doesn't do a whole lot, honestly, because it's hard to get enough friction so that you can get it in there, but also so that it holds it in place. The tape around the bottom is surprisingly effective. I've never lost a motor that I had taped in, which admittedly I haven't flown a lot of motors that I would just tape in, but still, you know, it's not zero. All right, so I'm gonna follow the instructions here. So first thing to do is I'm gonna put a little bit of glue around the just the inside here, and I'm going to grab one of these engine blocks. I'm going to just get it ever so slightly in and then push down so that it's flush. Repeat the process because I need 3 of these. I'm sure I will definitely have cause and time to discuss the intricacies of flying with 3 motors, but the main one that's worth mentioning right now is if you are using the conventional alkaline battery Estes launcher that comes with a like starter set, that is not going to cut it. It simply just doesn't have the voltage necessary to pull off launching 3 motors at once. Okay. So you're gonna need something a little bit more robust. For my own personal use, when I'm flying, either at school or for fun myself, I have an Estes Pro Series launcher, and I have it running not off of the alkaline batteries that it can run off of, but off of a lithium polymer battery. So that thing, the voltage that can put out is 11 volts, so that's a significant step up from what the either double A's or the 9-volt can put out in the conventional Estes launcher. So that's kind of the minimum, honestly, to even try this. If you were trying to launch a cluster of 2, maybe you could launch it off of a 9-volt, but yeah, I would want something more significant. Alright, so anyway, I have put in the motor mounts. I'm going to get them all facing the same directions, and I'll screw this up. Because if you put one in backwards here, boy is that a problem. Alright, so in any event, now they need to go into this centering ring because this is what's going to go inside the body tube and hold everything in place. There's not much to this, right? A typical motor mount that you build has a front and a back to it. Well, this has just got the front. So, yeah, this is what's holding it together. This doesn't fit in here either, by the way, right? So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to glue it. Basically, you're going to glue it on the front, which doesn't seem like it's going to be all that strong, honestly, but it'll do the trick. All right, so let's do it. Really, you should probably wait until this dries thoroughly, but I don't think that's really going to be much of a problem, to be honest, although it would probably help if I had my nozzle open and not closed. Details, details. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this. I'm actually going to take the time to spread. That's not quite right. Well, there it is. There's the dowel. I'm going to take the time to actually spread it out, make sure it's even. There we go. And then this is just going to get stuck right on the top of this. There is one side that has a little pinhole here. I'm not really sure why that's the case. I don't think it does anything, as far as I can tell. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to put it on here like this. I'm going to put all three on as quickly as I can, and then I'm going to check to make sure that they are all lined up properly. I did think about allowing the glue to set and then putting a second application of glue on like I do for fins. I think that's probably not really necessary here. There's the shear force on this, the force that this is going to experience anyway, is going to push it into the wood, not off to the side. So that shouldn't be too big of a deal. Okay. I'm taking the time to spread it out because I want it to be even, because I know that I can see just looking at it that I didn't, even with my fairly narrow nozzle on this, I didn't have it particularly even. Alright. Now, I do need to make sure that there isn't any overhang here, so I can see that this one is a little bit hanging over the edge. That's a problem. So I'm going to just push that in. That's fine. And that one feels pretty good too. Okay. Now there's a ton of glue that's kind of sticking out here, so that's too big. I'm going to take my dowel here again, and I'm just going to spread it. Part of it I'm trying to mop it up, but spreading it would be a nice trick here too. Okay, just making sure that I got everything right. I don't build these all that often. It's always important to read the instructions. So in any event, centering ring on top, make sure the holes in the motor box line up with the holes in the centering ring as much as possible. That's pretty good. Make sure none of the tubes stick outside the centering ring or the motor mount will no longer fit in the body tube. Hooray! Yeah, so I'm just going to look at this one more time and make sure it feels, flush but not overhanging. And that should be pretty good. I'm going to just leave it like this to dry. And some of these are awfully close because it's really crammed in here, but that's good enough. So one last thing I'm going to say about this. So I mentioned it would be nice to have some kind of retention system. One option that you could pursue, and I think I might do this, it kind of depends on what I can find, is you could get a screw, so a metal screw. It would have to be a pretty small one in here, down in this gap, and then use some kind of pretty serious glue to affix it. And then you could use a washer and a nut to slide down so that the washer would just be slightly overhanging the motors, not into the nozzle part, of course, just ever so slightly. So it doesn't have to be very big. It wouldn't be much wider than the screw. And then you could use the nut to tighten it, and that could hold all three on in place. You might still want to tape them, but that's not a bad option. It'd be pretty light, and it would be fairly strong, all things being equal. You would have to either crazy glue or epoxy or something that in there to make sure that it fits. Wood glue would not do the trick, of course, because wood glue doesn't work too well on metal. Anyway, so that was two of the modular sections of this kit done. After that, I guess it is time to actually start building the non-modular parts. So thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.